It's everyone's favorite time of the week. Recap time. Week 14 recap incoming. Sponsored this week by Vanilla Ice Cream. All right, let's get to the matchups. First matchup is... How is this happening? Versus Egg United. It was Egg United coming out on top 116 to 97.6. That puts Egg United in third in the Clarence Campbell division. I think that's where they began when the week started. How is this happening? Still in third in the Prince of Wales division, though falling fast in terms of the win-loss record. Skinner, red hot with the Oilers, winning 11 straight. Skinner gets his second consecutive MVP with his third week in a row being Egg's highest score. I think that's third week in a row, though I cannot be certain of that. Mario Ferraro powers up with a very strong week, scoring 6.5 fantasy points on blocks and a total of 11.3 fantasy points. Svechnikov finally got off the bench, but he disappoints. Just 5.2 fantasy points. However, with the caveat that he only appeared in 2 games. Cam Talbot, he continues to regress, netting Hith a negative 2.1 fantasy points on the week. Let's go to the graph. Here we see that Egg United got off to a lead. How is this happening, though? Clawed back, but it was a big Saturday. You look at the total points, over 50 points on that Saturday. That really sealed the win for Egg United. Next up is Forest Hills Flames versus Lenny's Legends. It was the Legends with the win, 117.8 to 104.9. Lenny still leads the Campbell Conference 11-3, while Forest Hills has the mirror image with the record of 3-11. Matt Duchesne back with an incredible 11.4 fantasy point performance. I don't know if that's incredible, but it's very good. Is he in the running for best free agent pickup? Well, he'd probably have to be top 5, though I know up until this week, Nichushkin would be right up there. No one else is coming to mind. Maybe the other guy on Team 1 that I also tried to claim on the same week but lost him to Team 1. And I can never remember how to pronounce his name. Carter V, we'll call him. And Brad Marchand also has a good week, 11.2 fantasy points. Good week for the depth, it says. Matthew Tkachuk, is he back? It seems like he is. 13.6 fantasy points. Could be critical for adding a few wins down the stretch for the Flames. Very strong week for Jacob Markstrom, Lenny Legends draft pick. His goaltending nets the Flames. I don't know if this is in relation to it being the Flames, who haven't been very good this year. But anyways, 18.6 fantasy points on the week. He was the Flames MVP, but the matchup MVP belongs to Thatcher Demko, who got a big shutout on Saturday. We could go to the graphs, which are Flames colors, or also McDonald's colors, the red and the yellow. It was a back and forth affair. It started off with the Legends having a big lead, but Forest Hills came right back on day 2. Legends, though, counterpunch on day 3, but a big haymaker from the Flames on day 4. Look at that. But a big Friday night for the Legends really got them back into this matchup when it seemed on Thursday like all hope was lost. And then the Legends continue to roll on day 6. That was the day of Demko's shutout. And then day 7, another solid day to really cement the victory or the lead. You can look at this graph. It was back and forth, a really back and forth matchup. But in the end, you see those last 2 days, the Legends come out on top. Third matchup, Los Mustachios de Austin versus Doketown Danglers. It was the Danglers with a convincing win, 124.9 to 101.0. Again, the Danglers and the Mustachios were the two hottest teams coming into this matchup, but the Mustachios really had a bad week. It was really no contest when you look at this graph down here. So they're second in the Campbell Conference or Division, 7-6-1, while the Mustachios dropped to 9-5. Not a great performance from McDavid in his first week as a Dangler, 7.5 points. You want a little more than that. 14th round pick Vincent Trocheck, one of the best value picks of this year's draft. He gets 12.7 fantasy points. Not a bad week from the Boston goalie stack tandem, 4.6 points on a 4-game week with just one win. Not a bad week, not a great week. Not sure about that. But anyways, let's move on. No player reaches double digits for the Mustachios. Eichel, who I found out late, is injured. That could be a factor going forward. Looking at the graph, again, we said that the Danglers had a convincing win. It started on the first day, continued the second day. Mustachios came back a bit on the third day, but then other than, day 5 where it got a little closer, it really was the Mustachios, the Danglers, who got out front early and never relinquished that lead, and it never seemed to be in doubt for the Danglers. The MVP, once again, it seems like this is the story every week for the Danglers, Connor Hellebuyck with 15.6 fantasy points. Our next matchup is Staying Alive versus Skill Stick Fail. Staying Alive wins their third win in a row. We didn't think that was possible a few weeks ago, but now they sit at 4-10, fourth in the Prince of Wales division, while Skill Stick Fail remains in the cellar of the Clarence Campbell division, 3-11. Big scores from these two weaker teams historically in the Stick and Puck Fantasy Hockey League came right down to the wire. But it was a 3-point win for Staying Alive. Joey Daccord came out of nowhere, getting lots of wins in the Kraken's win streak, which this week has ended, losing 2 in a row now. But he averaged 6.3 fantasy points these past few weeks. Anyways, he got 16.2 fantasy points this week to be the MVP in the matchup. Staying Alive, high point total, despite team MVP Zach Hyman getting just 5.5 fantasy points. Skill Stick Fail, nobody expected this. I think that's a full stop in that no one expected the big total, but I think we would expect high scores from Mitch Marner and perhaps Andrei Vasilevsky. He's been up and down. Owen Tippett, that would be a surprise. But big totals, as was said, from both teams. But when we look at the graph, it was Staying Alive that just managed to get those 3 extra points. You can see it's back and forth here from one team to another. Day 4, lots of points, really even. Staying Alive, they were sweating it out. Look at day 6. Day 6, Skill Stick Fail really makes it close. Day 7, Sunday, made it a little closer, but just couldn't get enough points for the victory. Then our final matchup is Team 1 versus Slay All Day. This was another nail biter, but in the end, it was Team 1 winning 108.3 to 104.6. Team 11 remains in first in their division, 11-3, while Slay All Day continues to drop in the standings. Well, not in the standings, perhaps. Maybe my memory is foggy on if they started third or fourth this week. Maybe they dropped a spot. You can look it up. But they dropped another game. I believe that's perhaps 4 losses in a row. They're reeling. They're falling. Just like, how is this happening? They need to stop the bleeding soon. 6-7-1. Now, look at the summary here. Injuries piling up for Team 1. But a strong, very strong win cushion should see them stay near the top of the standings. Martin Jones does not replicate his amazing Week 13 performance, just getting 2.2 fantasy points, though. Ingram, he bails out the goalies and gets 17.8 for the MVP. Tough loss. As mentioned, Slay getting their 4th consecutive loss. Falls out of the playoffs. 4 weeks ago, we would have thought that very unlikely, especially since we've expanded the playoff format to include 6, not 4 teams. On the bright side, Dobson stays incredibly consistent and effective. 10.6 fantasy points, his 5th 10-plus fantasy point week so far. Looking at the graph, you look at this one just quickly, you could see it was close and it was back and forth. First day was even. Team 1 got off to a big lead, though, in day 2. Day 3, fairly even. But you look at day 4, it was like the mirror image of day 2. And so Slay All Day came right back to become the leader on day 4. Day 5, Slay All Day increases the lead. But then, day 6, Team 1, calling upon that first place pedigree, they get back in this. And day 7 cements the win. They are the winners of the matchup. Let's go on to league-wide points. Not much has changed other than at the top, Doketown is with the top group now. Team 1 apparently was briefly in the lead, though the Legends now seem to be having... I don't know how many points that is. It looks impressive, but I think it's quite close. Team 1 and the Danglers are quite close there, 2nd and 3rd. The rest remains fairly consistent from the previous week. Going on to marquee matchups. What are our marquee matchups for this week? First of all, let's mention that there are 2 household matchups. We have father versus child. Skill Stick Fail facing Team 1 and Slay All Day facing Forest Hills Flames. But who are the marquee matchups? Not those 2. Those are the 2 least interesting matchups of the week. We have Egg United and Los Mustachios. That'll be one of our marquee matchups. 2 teams in the playoff hunt. Egg United has been scuttling a bit. And Los Mustachios, losers last week, they're looking for some momentum, a playoff push. Next, we have Lenny's Legends, and how is this happening? Not quite as interesting. Lenny, they're comfortably in first. How is this happening? Is falling fast, and their parachute is defective. The other marquee matchup, we're going to say, are the 2 hottest teams in the league. Once we thought hot and staying alive was an oxymoron, but it is true. Staying alive is one of the hottest teams in the league. Danglers and Staying Alive both have won 3 matchups in a row. This is your marquee matchup. Danglers versus Staying Alive. Secondary marquee matchup, Egg United versus Los Mustachios to Austin. Finally, our predictions. What are our predictions for the week? Well, we're now in Wednesday. We've seen 2 days already, but we're going to go with what I thought at the beginning of the week. And I mentally did this exercise, so I'm not just thinking of this now. Who did I think at the beginning of this week would win each matchup? First, we start with Egg United versus the Mustachios. We know that the Mustachios have an injured player, one of their big players, Eichel. We know that Egg United finished strongly last week. Stuart Skinner is racking up the points, benefiting and contributing to the Oilers' 11-game win streak. We're going to go with Egg United. Next up, Lenny's Legends. And how is this happening? Again, how is this happening? One of the coldest teams in the league. Poor roster management, neglect, really benefiting Lenny's Legends with Dylan Larkin on the bench. We're probably never going to pick against the Lenny's Legends, and that's not going to change this week. Lenny's Legends, we're picking for the big victory. Next up, the marquee matchup, Doketown Danglers versus Staying Alive. This is a difficult one to predict. Staying Alive historically this year has not been good. Danglers, one of the top 3 teams in terms of points for. However, Danglers feature 3 Pittsburgh players who only have 2 games this week. On the other hand, though we mentioned Staying Alive has been weak this year, the last 3 weeks, if not more, they've been quite strong. Who will we pick in the marquee matchup? We're going to wait. Let's go to the next matchup. Skill Stick Fail versus Team 1. As mentioned, Team 1 is dealing with lots of injuries. Skill Stick got lots of points last week. They're off to a big lead, but my prediction is, and maybe it would change after all of the factors or all the knowledge I know now, but the prediction is Team 1. And they did claw back a little bit on Tuesday. I think in the end this will be quite close. Finally, the 5th matchup, Slay All Day versus Forest Hills Flames. This is a tough one. They've both been struggling, but someone has to win unless Slay All Day gets their 2nd tie of the season. We're going to go with Slay All Day. Let's circle back to the marquee matchup, Danglers versus Staying Alive. Drum roll, please. We're going to go with Staying Alive to pull out the victory and get their 4th victory in a row. Slide Guy, starting to become a believer in Staying Alive. Might they actually make the playoffs? It still looks quite unlikely. But if they could get a victory today, combined with some other things going their way, there is a very small window, a very narrow pathway to the playoffs. So, Staying Alive, the prediction is will win this week's marquee matchup. And that does it, folks, for the Stick and Puck Fantasy League Week 14 recap. We'll see you next week.